A lot of people think inflation is here to stay. But regardless, well, then doesn't that mean we're going to see interest rates fall quite a bit? Or is the Fed still going to be kind of stingy with the rates, even if inflation is under control?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so a couple things. Number one, absolutely, I agree with you that you have to distinguish between asset classes and you have to distinguish between assets and goods and services. And so if we were going to see a collapse in real estate prices, especially like entry-level homes, it would have already happened by now. It reacts extremely quickly to monetary policy. Like we saw, houses skyrocketed as soon as the money printer turned on in 2020. And that's because all the money flooded in. But because of the fundamentals there, the shortage in supply versus the demand, what they've done to tighten is not enough to cause any sort of a crash there in especially like entry level housing. And so you do have to look at the supply and demand factors because you're gonna break things down. So if we look at something like the CPI, there will definitely be things in the basket that continue to increase in price just because people still keep on buying them and they'll stop buying everything else in order to keep on affording the things like, the food and the electricity and things like that. And so on average, I'm saying that the collapse in most assets has already happened. I mean, we've seen crypto go to, zero, basically. We've seen a lot of tech stocks drop 80-90%. The S&P 500 starting December of 2021 has dropped 25% from its high. And now I think we're about to start seeing a flatlining of inflation in the CPI in goods and services because of the money, the broad money supply not increasing. So there's no mechanism by which, on average, it can continue to get pushed up. That won't be true of every individual thing. But you get to a good point that what happens after that, because is the Fed going to run victory laps? And so this kind of gets into the reset and the CBDC issue that we were going to talk about as well.
Yeah, that's a good segue. So CBDCs are central bank digital currencies. In other words, digital money. It's a cryptocurrency, but sponsored by a central bank in collusion with the government. Okay.
Right.
And every country will probably have one in the not too distant future. China has probably been the quickest major economy to adopt this, but the US it's coming. And, we've all been predicting it. It's not going to be any surprise to us. But about 20 years ago, one of our clients and a doctor friend of mine in Newport Beach, California, we used to always talk about how if there was, and this was, of course, way before we ever heard of cryptocurrency, right? Way before Bitcoin, if there ever was a single global currency, because that was what the talk was before we heard about crypto. There was going to be a North American currency called the Amero. People speculated on that. And there was going to be, of course, there's the euro. We already know that. But there were going to be fewer currencies as these governments collude, and largely to kind of kill the tax dodgers and the offshore asset protection havens and things like that, in the Cayman Islands and all the, Cook Islands and all the rest around the world. We've all heard about the Panama Papers and so forth. We always said that if that ever happens, if there's a single global currency, even a traditional one, like a world dollar, for example, right? If it's one currency, that is checkmate against the human race. If that happened, we would all become puppets on a string of the elites, right? But now, with a central bank digital currency, it's much more effective for them and much scarier for us because the type of control they can exert over us is simply staggering. I mean, just think about your currency only being valid at certain times of day. Just think about your currency being inflated away at a different rate than your neighbors because your social score is lower, right? What if it's only good within a mile of your house, right? What if there's a climate lockdown or another, fake pandemic, right? And they say you got to stay home. You can't spend it outside. Or what if they don't like what you post online and they say yours doesn't work for internet access?
Right.
but everybody else's does, right? It's just really, really ominous what could happen with that.